I've had my Gallardo for about 6 months now, and I'm slowly coming to terms of what it means to own a cheap Lamborghini. So in this video, I'm going to list all the things that were wrong with it and all the things that I have done to try and fix those things, and try and add up how much it's all cost. First, the history. This is my MY06 Lamborghini Gallardo coupe. It was built in November 2005, so it's one of the first of the mechanical facelift, 5 litres, meaning it has a few improvements over the original version, most notably shorter gear ratios and a few tweaks in the engine bay. This one's an import from the UK, supposedly owned by Tim Cahill, or Cahill, who I believe is someone famously in the balls. It's got about 75,000 Ks on it for the most part. It seems to be in very good condition. The interior especially is great compared to any other Gallardo I've seen, which is admittedly a small sample size. I paid 150,000 for it, which kind of implied it had issues, as really good examples go close to 200,000. I bought this car last December in Sydney, and then drove it home the next day 1,000 kilometers to Brisbane, which was both fucking awesome and fucking sucked, because the air conditioning didn't work and the heater was stuck on 100% the whole time. You couldn't, if you wanted fan, you got heat. And for any Americans watching, that's bad because summer is in December in Australia. At handover, the previous owner said that the fuel gauge was broken and you should always fill up at half when it reads like half. I thought, okay, no problems. So I felt it starve after about 200 Ks with a full tank, and no problems, whatever, I just filled up. And kept doing that the whole way home. The problem is 200 Ks shouldn't, like, okay, it's a big V10, sure, and it uses a lot of fuel, but 200 Ks is still not enough, because this is supposed to have like a 70 or a 90 litre tank or something like that. And that would be too many litres per 100 K, even for this. So clearly there was some sort of issue. You know, I would also get a short distance, try and put fuel in, and fuel wouldn't go in. I ended up filling it up like 6 times, I think, on the way home. So there was definitely something going wrong with the fuel. I had my first set of check engine lights on the way home. The day after I bought the car, and they were catalytic converter over temp lights. I think it was probably because I was running out of fuel, and you know, it was running lean or something, and that was causing issues, but it wasn't that. I did get home though, which is pretty awesome, to, you know, just drive 1,000 Ks and actually get it all the way home. But then that's when I really started looking into this thing and trying to figure out what was going on. I immediately got a roadworthy. At the time, the handbrake basically didn't work. It wouldn't even hold it on our driveway, which is not very steep, but it passed the roadworthy. I'm pretty sure the guy just liked the car too much to fail it. So let's go through the parts that I have replaced. Oh, I've lost that part. Did I throw that out? I must have thrown that out. Oh, I didn't throw it. Here it is. Here it is. The hot air was due to a dead heater control valve solenoid. Fixing this was somewhat tedious and involved draining most of the coolant, pulling apart some of the interior, swapping the solenoids over. I got a no brand one for cheaps. It cost me 60 bucks. The coolant was more expensive at like 100 bucks. At the first service, they regassed the air conditioning, and now it works pretty decent. They also adjust the handbrake, and now it's okay. It'll hold my driveway, which is not very impressive, but it's better than nothing. I did some Googling, and apparently fuel pumps can cause weird things like running out of fuel more often than you think you should because the pumps overheat or whatever. So I replaced it. The car's got 2 of them. If one goes, the car just loses half its power basically. 140 bucks for a new one, not too bad. Just a Volkswagen one, you don't need the Lambo one. That goes for almost every part on this car. You don't need to buy the Lambo part. The Lambo part is literally either just a standard VW part, like a Bosch or whatever, or a Magneti Marelli or Weber, which is worse than the Audi Lambo part, sorry, the Audi VW part anyway, so you should just not get the original one because it's worse. So yeah, I ran the car dry, driving around with the jerry can, put some litres in to get some home, and then changed it over. It's a bit tedious, it's not that bad, but you know. Once I did this, I filled it up with fuel, and it only took 50 litres, which is really weird, given that it's supposed to have 70 or 90, I don't really know which one, but more than 50. Very strange. I could see inside the fuel tank and it was literally empty, dry. There was nothing in it at all. Figured I'd remove the engine bay trim to have a look and see what I couldn't see, and found out that my fuel tanks have imploded, which explains why I can only get 50 litres into the car and why the fuel level sensors don't work properly. To replace the tanks, you need to drop the engine, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to do that when I need a new clutch. They still work, so it's whatever. They're fine. They're fine for now. They also cost about $1,500 per tank. So yeah, it's not that's going to be an expensive moment when I eventually do that. Why were they imploded? I still don't 100% know, but in the time I thought it might have been the fresh air valve part of the PCV system. PCV? No, part of the evap system. So this is supposed to open up and let pressure, into the tanks so that they don't implode. I replaced it and it didn't make a change, so I don't think it's that. I now think it's the pressure sensor, because these cars, in their infinite genius, rather than just having a passive pressure valve like most cars have in their fuel cap, these use electronics, and Italians are known for really good electronics. The rear grills were not mounted very firmly, because it gets really hot at the back of the car and then the screws pull through the plastic. I designed some little inserts that go into the grill and hold the screw, and everything gets held together nicely. So that fixed them. The tail lights broke. Well, the tail lights mounting tabs were broken. Again, same thing with the honeycomb grill. These get hot and they crack. So I designed some parts to fix them. I now sell these on my website in case you want to fix your grills. I also designed and printed replacement tail light tabs. So you can also buy them on my website. They're nylon carbon fiber, or I think I've been using PBT glass fiber lately because it's better, it's a bit stronger, and it's UV resistant. So yep, that fixed the tail lights. The front washer flaps sat slightly recessed from the bodywork, which was very trivial, but whatever, I printed some spaces to line them up so they sit flush. The front trunk, whatever word you want to call it, light was blown. So I replaced that with a Volkswagen one. Don't buy Lamborghini parts, generally speaking. I replaced a charcoal canister because I thought, if this is clogged, then maybe it's not this, the evap system causing the tanks to implode, maybe it's this. It wasn't. You can't buy these parts anymore. They don't make them. And here's like a Lambo bracket, cool. So I designed and printed a bracket that will fit a Dorman charcoal canister, which is very similar, not quite the same, but very similar. And you can adapt it to the Gallardo. And they cost, obviously, a lot less than a part you can't even get anymore. The engine harness plug brackets were very rusted. This is what a good one looks like, or a relatively good one after 20 years. This is what a not so good one looks like. That's bad, I don't like that. So I designed and printed new ones of these out of, again, PA6 carbon fiber. So they're not gonna rust, and they're lighter. Performance. 3 of the 5 airbox mounts were destroyed. These are good ones. So the airbox bolts into there, and then this screws into the chassis rail member, whatever you want to call it. These are destroyed. So I printed some new ones out of TPU, and they are still holding up quite well. Because my fuel issues were still not sorted, I replaced the second fuel pump. And then after I replaced it, the car wouldn't start on that side of the engine, and I couldn't figure out why, and I tore the whole car apart trying to figure out what was going on, and then I realized I didn't plug it in. Very good. There's a little pluggy plug. You gotta push the plug down, because if you don't, it just comes off the contacts and then it doesn't work, and then you get really concerned. So that was literally days. Here's my car. Just fixed it by plugging in the fuel pump. It took me quite a while to plug in the fuel pump because I didn't realize the fuel pump wasn't plugged all the way in. And so I removed the airbox from it. It normally goes here-ish. And I thought, while I was here, I may as well remove the heat shield that's over there. It's above the exhaust because it's not a stock exhaust. And because it's not a stock exhaust, it doesn't get as hot. But I am going to get some wrap for that. But I figured because I had to take this panel out, and I figured I may as well show you the little bits that I made, because on all of these, apparently, definitely on mine, the little holes that you can't see that I will get better footage of in a second. There you go, that's what they look like when they're in, nice and neat. Basically the plastic just pulls through on all of them eventually because of the heat cycling. So that's with a heat shield too, by the way. This is not post heat shield removal, this is pre heat shield removal. So I have designed and manufactured, aka printed, some little nuts like this, little plastic inserts. And the way you chuck them on is you grab yourself one of your little trim screws. They often have a little, like this one here, they have a washer on them, but you take the washer off because this plastic thing goes to replace the washer. And you can just stick it in like this. And you can see that it fits very snug in there. That can spin, like I said, this is like a washer. Then you just put that wherever it's supposed to go. This one I'm doing first because the actual mounting bracket snapped off. And just do that for all of them. There are 16. There's 4, 8, 4, and you're good to go. And they're made out of, these ones are made out of ASA, which has like 150 or something degree melting temperature. So if they fail, you've had an engine fire and you've got bigger problems. As part of that, because I wasn't sure what was going on, I thought it might have been an electrical issue because the fuel pump wasn't running, so it must be electrical, right? I replaced the battery. This was one of the more expensive parts at like $400-ish. This battery turns out is actually quite a good battery. It's really big, you can't even see how big it is. It's a massive battery. Anyway, I replaced it with a in-spec one, which is much smaller than this, which, I mean, it's lighter, that's great, but also means it's gonna hold a charge and not as good. While trying to figure out why the car wouldn't start with the whole pump not being plugged in, I replaced an O2 sensor. Where are you there? Because when I found this, I was digging around, I found that's bad. You don't want that. They shouldn't look like that. So I replaced that. I thought it might be the O2 sensor. You can go there. But that obviously didn't sort the issue out. I also replaced the fuel pressure regulator on that side. This character comes back in this story, but yes, it was, air quotes, not that. No, actually it wasn't that. So on the right-hand side of bank one, that was the one that wasn't working. I replaced the fuel pressure regulator and then I switched it back because like, it didn't make a difference. So clearly it wasn't that. Or was it? It wasn't, not on that side anyway. I replaced all the spark plugs. That's not all of the spark plugs, but I threw the other ones out because I thought maybe that's what's causing the car not to run. By the way, these things, remember, I replaced the spark plugs, the fuel pressure regulator, the O2 sensor, because I didn't plug the fuel pump in. That was really annoying. Also, the spark plugs I used apparently were wrong because they have the wrong gap. It's really not a big deal. Car runs great. I would not stress too much about it either way. The ones I've got have a 1.1 mil gap instead of a 0.8 mil gap, but that's not, it doesn't matter. But yes, after I plugged in the fuel pump, it was pretty good, but it still had some issues. It would do weird stuff like idle bad, and you know, as you drive it, it would like slowly lose power and eventually cut off a bank. Bank one usually. I thought it might be the coil packs. So I replaced all the coil packs. That's not all the coil packs. I do have them if you want to buy them off me, because it wasn't the coil packs. They're all perfect. That was rather expensive. These were a couple $100 for a set of 10, as you need. So obviously I replaced them and it wasn't them. So the next logical thing to replace is all the injectors. They were quite expensive because they were Bosch, and Bosch is expensive. Good news, it was not the injectors. So if anyone wants some injectors, they're still good. Then I decided it was probably time to change the catalytic converters. It's like the very first thing. When if you go like, hey, I'm going to get a new Lamborghini, as one does, what's the first maintenance task I should do? People say, change the catalytic converters. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, but they're all expensive in that. But now that I'd done many things, I figured it's probably time to change my catalytic converters. It's one of them. I'll get the other one. These are hefty boys. You're not going to believe this, but when everyone says to change your catalytic converters, you should change your catalytic converters. These are fucked. They are so dead, it's ridiculous. Definitely change them immediately. I'll insert a photo of the gaskets that go between the headers and the catalytic converters. They are even more fucked. They just disintegrated as soon as I took the cats out. As usual, when it comes to Lambo parts, I was very offended at the price of things. So I found literally the cheapest cats I could find on the internet, which were from Millionaire Racing, which is obviously a very, dignified name, as you'd expect. They're about $3,000 delivered, so not cheap, but actually quite cheap in the Lambo world. They look pretty good, to be honest, and they fit really good, and there was no issues, so win-win in the end. The right-hand gasket fell apart into multiple pieces. The left-hand gasket didn't fall apart because, I'm guessing, because it didn't fall as far when it hit the ground, but then it crumbled in my hands later. The new OEM gaskets are hundreds of dollars. The best price I could find online was 200 USD, which is like 350 Australian dollars, plus postage for 2 of them, which is disgusting because it's a piece of metal. It's literally a ring of metal. I disliked it so much that I actually ended up designing my own gaskets and sent them off to get 3D printed out of stainless steel by JLC 3DP, who don't sponsor me, but I'd chill them if they did. It's actually the first thing I got printed with the JLC 3DP, and it was super easy and very reasonably priced. They turned out really good. They fit perfectly. They are in the car currently and holding temperature, up to the temperatures, no problems at all, which is not surprising because it's made of stainless steel. So there are probably other parts of the car that would break before the stainless steel melted, for example, or degraded. The notable point about all this, though, is that the stock gaskets were letting air into the exhaust between the headers and the cats, and that is important because the cats have the O2 sensor in them. The O2 sensor, what it does is sense the O2. So O2 was getting in here, and then this was reading that O2 and therefore saying, oh no, the car is lean. And so it just dumped fuel into the cats because it basically made the car run really rich. And what happens is that fuel goes through the engine and goes into your cats, which have a catalyst in them. That's why they're called cats. And it burns the fuel, and it burns it quite efficiently, and they get really, really hot. So these were getting to well over 600 degrees Celsius. I had the O2 sensor glowing red, which it should not. That's not... red is not a spec color for steel parts of your O2 sensor. That's bad. So yes, replacing them was not a trivial task. The right-hand side, which is probably this one. No, this one. One of them, it doesn't matter. The right-hand side is not that hard to get out. You can pretty much just do it by removing the airbox and a couple other things. The left-hand side, however, is very hard to get out. You need to remove wheels and wheel trim and bolts, and then like flex a chassis member out of the way, and then you can like snake it past the oil tank thing. It's not fun. That was not enjoyable. Thankfully, aftermarket ones are usually way smaller than the OEM ones, and there's heaps of clearance to get things in, and like even like the O2 position, like this on the, this must be the left-hand side, yeah. On this, oh, yeah, that goes there. There's another O2 sensor here, and it like touches the engine. That's bad. Like on the stock setup, the O2 sensor touches the engine. It touches the like cam cover or something. The timing chain cover, which is bad. Whereas in the aftermarket ones, it's set back a little bit, and you got heaps more clearance. It's heaps better. Strongly recommend replacing them immediately. Replacing the cats, and probably more specifically replacing the gaskets, fixed so many things. The car now, you can just drive it until you run out of fuel, instead of until it overheats. It's hundreds of degrees cooler under the bonnet, under the engine cover, whatever. Things don't go orange anymore, which is good. It's just so much better. So this solved most of the big issues with the car. I think this is probably the thing that contributed to the price the most. So, you know, 150K, which I get it, it's not $0, it's not cheap. But for what it is, that's a great price, and it ended up costing me like $3,000–4,000, and it's probably added quite a bit more than that to the resale value. The other thing I decided to change, because basically you would drive it along and it would make like no torque below 4,000 RPM. If you put your foot down, it would actually lose power rather than gaining power. So I thought I would replace my intake VVT solenoids. I'm running out of space because these cats are so... My intake VVT solenoids. Because they are very cheap. Once again, if you go to a Lamborghini parts person and ask for them, they'll be hundreds of dollars. But if you get them from AliExpress, they are like 30 bucks. They're a standard part that's on many different cars. They're not Gallardo specific. They're on like Golfs and Jettas and stuff. So there's no reason to buy a Lambo specific part. Anyway, they're super easy to replace. They are literally just like on top of the engine, one screw, pull them out, put them back in, screw it back in, done. These transformed the car. This like, it went from like this, you know, very doggy car to drive at low RPM to perfect. It's now perfect. Insane. Everybody with a Gallardo who hasn't done this in the last 5 to 10 years should do it because it's so cheap and so easy. Figured I should probably also do the exhaust solenoids. Since the intakes made such a big difference, I should probably do the exhaust ones. So I also did them. They're literally the same part. So another $30 each, not really a lot of money. Bank one, the right-hand side, is super easy, not a problem. The left-hand side is not super easy. It's very annoying, and it involves undoing even more chassis componentry than the left-hand cat. That's extremely annoying. There's a bolt under here which goes through this frame section, and it's accessible via jacking the car up. Actually, I think it's like just behind there. I don't know, it's in there somewhere. Here's the point, which is not good. It's actually insane how different the same part on either side of the engine is in terms of difficulty. They also didn't make a big difference. So even though I'm pretty confident they were also dead, I think by dead I mean they're all varnished. Like they don't, the little plungery thing inside there, you can't focus. Yeah, focus, there we go. There's like a little plunger inside there, you can barely see it. And that's what gets moved around by, there's the solenoid, the electromagnet in here moves these things, which gives the oil different channels to go in. It doesn't move, like it's just varnished shut. So yes, I figured probably they're all dead, but changing the exhaust ones didn't really change anything. Like I couldn't tell you either way whether it made any difference, to be totally honest. So there you go. This is the selection of things that I have replaced on the car. It's taken a fair bit of time. When people say Lamborghinis are expensive, what they mean is labor is expensive, especially on Lamborghinis. And the labor costs for doing all of this would have been thousands of dollars. I would say probably well over $5,000, maybe getting close to $10,000, especially the amount of time debugging things and figuring out what's going on. This would have been very expensive, but because I did it, it was basically free, labor-wise. I mean, obviously time isn't free, but whatever, here we are. What else did I forget? Oh yeah, when I did the cats, I also replaced another O2 sensor, as you do. That was important. That's a good idea after they go glowing red. I also had to remove the back box of the car, which I found out was actually a Tubi, which is why my car sounds so good compared to stock Gallardos. It's got the double pitch exhaust sounds amazing. But anyway, the exhaust, where can I put this? Oh, there's space over here. The exhaust clamps thingies, the bolts were completely seized, so I had to cut them off with an angle grinder, as you do to your Lambo. Anyway, so what's next? Oh yes, so the latest update is that it still doesn't idle perfectly, and I was watching the fuel trims on just a cheapo OBD2 scanner, and noticing that when you drive for a bit and then come to a rest, the trims go like really rich for a second, like a really short period of time. Not the trims, the lambda readings. And so the trims correct by going really negative. So they go really, really negative, like negative 10% short-term trim, which basically pulls a whole bunch of fuel from the car. The car starts running lean and it doesn't idle very well. Anyway, so I've been going through so many different things trying to figure out what it could possibly be. I'm like, oh, I've changed everything. There's hardly any original parts left on the car other than just the block, basically. I've even took apart I missed that part. I literally missed it. The throttle, what do you call it? The TPS, the throttle position sensor. I took that apart and cleaned that out. I've been through the whole thing. It's crazy. All the little parts of this car that could make sense, I've changed on bank one, which bank one's the one that has all the, what do you call it? The fuel. The bank one's the one that has the air to fuel ratio and trim issues. So I'm like, it's got to be bank one. And then I realized something. I was like trying to get to sleep one night and I realized, hold on a second. At idle, these cars have variable intake geometry. So that means they have like a different length of intake runner at idle versus under load. They have like little valves that open up flaps that lets air go different paths. To make the path longer, when the valves are closed, which is like idle and low load, they actually draw intake from the opposite bank. So bank one draws its intake from bank two, right? Now I've been trying to figure out this weird fueling problem, and I've been looking at the fuel pressure regulator. This guy. I was like, clearly it's not the fuel pressure regulator because I changed it and nothing happened. But I changed it for bank one, which does supply the fuel for bank one under all conditions. However, if the fuel pressure regulator's diaphragm breaks, fuel, which is supposed to go, I think it's in here and then out here, or in here and out here, I don't really know which one it is, doesn't matter. Fuel can go through the diaphragm and out through this vacuum hose. And when it does that, it goes into your intake and you get fuel in your intake, which is bad. That's bad. So I tested this on bank one with a tube of plastic that I could see through. And there was no fuel. I'm like, okay, well, it's not that then. And then yes, when I had my epiphany of it being on the other bank, I went to bank two fuel pressure regulator, which this is bank two's fuel pressure regulator. spoilers, it's not in the car anymore because it's got fuel in it. See that? That's fuel. And there should not be fuel in the intake plenum side of a fuel pressure regulator. Just to be clear, this came out of this. That is not supposed to have anything in it except for air. So brown liquids, bad. So this is dead. This is dead. I have replaced it currently with a really cheap Alibaba one, or AliExpress or whatever. And it seems a little better. It's not like perfect, but it's a bit better. And I've got 2 Bosch units on the way. So I'll just replace both of them. Then I'll have nice, fresh componentry. What else did I change? I also changed the map sensor. And I think that's it. I think that's all the things that I replaced on my Lambo. And all of this stuff cost me well under $10,000. Well under $10,000. Like 5,000, maybe 6 if you include the first service. So let's say 6 grand. And it took it from a car that like didn't run very well to a car that now runs very well and I have very little issues with at all. So far, it seems like I got a bit of a bargain. I think I've increased its value by quite a lot more than I put into it. And at the end of the day, I get to drive a Lambo. Like, that's crazy. It's so cool. People often go like, oh, I wonder what it'd be like to own a Lamborghini. The answer is very good. I recommend it. It's very fun. However, if you don't know how to fix cars, no, don't get one unless you have a lot of money. You either need to have a lot of money or you need to know how to fix cars. You can't get a cheap Lamborghini that runs perfectly. It doesn't seem to be a thing. But if you want to fix it yourself, I mean, this view does not get old. As I was saying before my camera died, yeah, this view doesn't get old. Every single night I come into my garage and I go Lambo check, and there's still a Lamborghini here, which is just crazy. Wacky life. But yes, it does take either a lot of money or effort and knowledge about cars to get yourself a reasonably priced one. But if you can do that, it's insane. It's so cool.